Hey, so tonight's shir is first of all very exciting. That tonight's shir is sponsored literally by the Darchei Noam Fairlawn Chabura. That's very special, and thank you to Josh Blackman for making that happen, and for all of you for being here. So we're starting now our journey through Hilchos Kashrus, and tonight's sugya is basically talking about the notion of shir hamtana, how much time you should wait in between eating meat to eating milk. So the Gemara says that the shir is basically that one should wait misudasa lesudasa. So one should wait from one meal to another. The Rambam famously says, how much is a meal? So the Rambam famously says that's kamo sheisha'ot. It's about six hours. And that's where you begin to introduce, all based on the Rambam. Many other Rishonim don't say, they give a more simple shir, which is 6 hours. But the Rambam said this idea is kamo sheisha'ot. And that's where you get this idea of into the 6 hour as being a possible option. But before we get into that whole discussion of into the 5th hour, we also have another sheet of Tosos, which often gets overlooked. Tosos quotes a deya that all you need to do is to end your meal and bench. And maybe according to Rabbeinu Tam, or I forget which day it was, maybe you have to do what we call kinuach and adacha. You'd have to wash your hands and wash out your mouth. So basically we have two schools of thought. Is it about ending your meal, or is it about a shear of time that one needs to wait? And then where do we go within that shear? So how do we paskin in the shaila? So the Shulchan Aruch paskins that one should wait literally 6 hours. The Ramah says, quotes the shita, which is known as the Dutch shita, waiting 1 hour, but then says, but really, there are those who wait 6 hours, v'chein nachon lasos, and that's really what is best to do. So where did the idea of the discrepancy between 5.5 hours versus in the 6 hour? So based on Ram that says kamo sheisha'ot, so then you would say kamo. So is that 5 hours and 1 minute, or some supposedly it says 5.5 hours? Why? Because the concept that within a half hour of something means you're already in that range. So if you want to say that you need 5.5 hours, which is what Ravad Yosef says, so then he says once you have to do 5.5 within that range, you're good to go. It was quoted in the name, I think it was maybe not Rav Cutler, but there are those who say into the 6 hour, maybe it was Rav Yashiv, as a also viable option. But the consensus amongst all the poskim is one should do 6 hours. That's definitely the consensus, 6 hours, or the other option of 1 hour. And the question I wanted to deal with tonight, this is all kind of just a summary, was where does 3 hours come from? So a little background about myself. I grew up as a 3 hour Jew. I thought that was one of the opinions in halacha. And then I got to yeshiva, and I learned the sugya for the first time, Shana Aleph or Shana Bet, and I felt very silly. Because you have to do some real digging to see where this shita is really based off of. So I remember going over. First, let me try to give a little halacha background on what the shita might be based off, because it's not in the Shulchan Aruch. You will find it in, I think here he quoted the Mishnah Halachos. You will find in the Badei HaShulchan does quote the minhag of Germany. I think the essential approach that's suggested to explain the minhag of 3 hours is that in the winter, the question is, the Gemara says misudas l'sasa, from meal to meal. The question is, how long is from meal to meal? So in the winter months, where the day is shorter, so they would serve dinner earlier. And so if you have, let's say your lunch is always at 12:30, but your dinner in the winter months is going to be at, let's say, 4:30 instead of being at 6 in the summer months when you have all day to have your summer barbecues. So the mesudas l'sudasa was truncated, and some want to say that's why in Europe this minhag developed. And it's interesting, I always knew it as the minhag of Germany, but he quotes here that many people from South Africa and London do have this approach of waiting 3 hours. So where does it come from? It probably comes from this idea of trying to figure out mesudasa l'sudasa, and we're giving some room for discrepancy between the seasons of the year. Now, most Muslims don't like that because we usually say lo plu. We don't like to make differentiations between what time of the year. A really cool thing, which I'd never seen before, I don't know if anyone saw it in one of the footnotes. One of the footnotes suggested that maybe it comes from England, or in Europe they have a very important part of the meal, which is called tea time. That tea time happens, I don't know, what tea time is, around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And if tea time is a very chashuv part of your regimen, so it could be that tea time actually makes it. If you had lunch at 12:30, and then tea time is 3 o'clock, that could be where you get down to 3 hours. I never heard that before. I saw that in one of the footnotes over here, and that maybe that's the explanation of where 3 hours developed. Either way, I felt a quandary because I felt a quandary. What do I do? Because there seemed to be only two shitot, and so I asked one of the rebbeim in Shalavim. It was actually Rebben Yaakov, who was the mashgiach. I said, Rebbe, I'm going to go home, and if I start to be machmer for 6 hours, it's going to cause, luckily it seems to be the ideal option, but it's going to cause some problems in my house. So he literally, he slapped me. He slaps. He gave me like a nice patch on my cheek and said, in his broken English, he said something like, Jeremy, don't be so frum. Don't cause machloket in your home. That's not the goal. You want to go home and be creating more harmony when you go home and not to cause problems. So he told me that I should keep staying 3 hours, which I subsequently did for a number of years. And then at some point when I was in smicha, so then I revisited the topic and asked a different rebbe, and they said to me at some point, I got the advice is, why don't you wait till you get married? And when you get married, so then you can switch your minhag to waiting 6 hours, which now led me to a new problem, a new crisis, in the fact that my wife knew that I waited 3 hours, because as a Basar, I was still waiting 3 hours. And she claims, Ala Yom Hazeh, that the reason why she married me is because I wait 3 hours. And when I said, I'm sorry, Charlie, I'm planning on switching to 6 hours when I get married, she felt that was going to throw our whole marriage down the tube. And therefore I said to her, if you were marrying me on that premise, you can continue that premise. I'm going to be machmer and start wearing 6. Now, the reason why I'm kind of smiling, besides the humor of this whole Mekach Taos thing, is because really it's not fair. Because I don't eat dairy anyway. So it's not fair for me to be machmer, make the jump of 3 to 6, when I have lactose intolerance and all the good ice creams and pizzas I can't eat. So I'm being machmer, but it's not really so hard for me. And then to say to my wife, who likes all those things, you thought you were going to go from 6 hours to 3 hours of marrying me, and now you have to wait 6 hours. I didn't feel like it was so fair. So I think for the first few months of our wedding, I didn't publicize yet that I was switching to 6. I still don't talk about the fact that I do 6. But my wife knows, but she doesn't think it's a real chumrah on my part, or anything on my part, because I don't really eat dairy. So anyway, that's the story. The implication is if that is your minhag, there is what to rely on. It is mentioned in Badei Shulchan. It's mentioned and brought down as halacha. So you should follow the tradition that of your forefathers, whatever it was. It was very interesting. There were sources that said that if you learn the halacha and it really wasn't your minhag, and you're doing it maybe not for the best reason, you should try to be machmer and switch to 6. So if you're looking to switch to 6, again, my family also was born in my parents were born in DP camps in Germany, but they weren't historically from Germany, and my grandparents weren't from. So they took on the customs of the people they were in the DP camps with them when they were kind of learning about all this. So we didn't feel like we were really Germans. Michael, you're a real Yekka, it's in your blood. So a real Yekka, I think, is a different. You ask your Yekkish Rabbanim of whether you should be machmer. Rosh Hashanah does say ideally one should switch, probably based on that Shach and Taz. Shach and Taz says you should go get people to do 6 hours. Don't ask anyone, okay? Michael's not talking about. But either way, those who wait 3 have what to rely on. Those who wait 1 definitely want to rely on. Those who wait 5 and a minute, and those who wait 5. Everyone has what to rely on. The gold standard, I guess, is waiting 6. And maybe next week we'll talk about how all of this is really for the adults, and then we'll talk about maybe next week about what to do for our children.